afterwards, and Isiah Thomas going after the refs, he'll probably be fine for that. Let's bring in our 5-time NBA All-Star, Brad Daugherty. As I said, Isiah Thomas said, it's horrible when it costs you a game. You should have won. That's a bad call. Brad, was it a foul?
It was a foul. It looked to me like he got him. He did graze him on the elbow. And whenever you shoot the basketball, if he makes the shot before he makes the call.
Exactly.
That's the problem in the whole situation to me, not whether or not it was a foul. I do think it was a foul.
Bulls 22 for 22 on free throws last night, by the way.
Great.
Okay. You make shots like that, you're going to win the game,
Absolutely.
whether you have a call like that or not. Let's get to the Wizards. That was the only other game that we had on the docket.
Scott Brooks has done an amazing job. He should be considered for Coach of the Year. Absolutely phenomenal job. But I think the Celtics are a legitimate threat, especially with the Cavaliers being banged up with J.R. Smith and Kevin Love.
And even if they don't make a move, you still think the Celtics can contend
I do.
with them.
I think Brad Stevens is an excellent basketball coach. I think he manages his game as well as anyone in the game right now. They would be a tough out if they had to face the Cavaliers.
They keep doing more than we expected them to do,
Yes,
right? They were better last year than we thought they'd be, and the year before as well. We'll see.
One player away.
One player away. Brad Daugherty's going to come back in just a little bit, tell us some of his biggest storylines from the first half of the NBA season. That is just ahead. But let's get to the...
And that's why the video becomes so huge. Because think about it in a courtroom. People are really going to look at that video, if this ended up being in a courtroom, and say, well, that's going to tell me a lot about what really happened.
I think people are also going to look at these charges. One of the ones that stands out the most to most people is that misdemeanor charge.
Right.
Ryan, what is a terroristic threat? People, you see it and it's like terrorism. Wait a minute. Can you explain?
It's frightening. Again, we don't know what happened for sure, but that's what could have happened. And if it ends up being a he said, and they can't really figure it out, perhaps that charge goes away. We don't know yet.
You have to go away because you actually have a show that you have to get prepared for.
That's right.
Outside the Lines coming up on ESPN at 1 p.m. So we'll see you there. Ryan Smith, our legal analyst, just giving us a little insight into what's happening with Darrelle Revis. And now we all know what terroristic threat means. Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
All right, to the ice we That was still when he was just dazzling people because they didn't know what was coming. His Royal Airness gifted us that dunk contest 30 years ago. Today, MJ is 54 years old. And in honor of that, we have a look at the 3 54-point games that he had during Jimmy Garoppolo and some other NFL topics. My pleasure to welcome in Hall of Fame GM Bill Polian and our NFL insider Ed Werder. I want to start with you, Bill. As a GM, what would you give up for Jimmy G?
It depends on a couple of things. Number one, and if he trusts Jacoby Brissett as the backup, then you can go ahead and trade him a year early rather than a year late, which is another Branch Rickey adage. But the bottom line is...
Let you go. I do want to talk to you about something very quickly, Bill, and get your take on Chad Kelly, who is the former Ole Miss quarterback, nephew to Jim Kelly, has had his invite to the Combine rescinded. And I know that you know the Kelly family very well. What do you know about this situation and what's facing Chad Kelly, why they pulled that?
To his 10th All-Star game yesterday, and coincidentally comes in place of Kevin Love, the player he's been mentioned in trade reports over the past month. So Love is out 6 weeks with a knee injury. Carmelo, what does this mean to you? Roddy White, who spent his entire 11-year career with the Falcons, had some really strong comments about how Kyle Shanahan and his former team blew the largest lead in Super Bowl history. Listen up. NFL quarterbacks are not exactly growing on trees, which is why so many people think Patriots backup Jimmy Garoppolo could be very tempting trade bait for teams in need of a QB this season. Jimmy G looked impressive in his 2 starts this season before suffering a shoulder injury, which sidelined him for the rest of Tom Brady's 4-game suspension. Here's ESPN Chicago's Tom Waddle on his trade value.